So this is the Star Quilt Block, which I've made several of these and added to a border on this 4th of July or Independence Day quilt or whatever I'm going to name it. I haven't decided yet. And then I'm going to show you in this tutorial how I'm making these Star Quilt Blocks. So let's head over to the sewing machine and get started. Okay, so this the finished size of these is 7.5. So it's 8 right now, but once you put it into a quilt or a project, it's going to be 7.5 inches. And the pattern is a PDF pattern, so you order it from my website. It gets emailed to you, and then you print it out, and you do your foundation paper piecing. So we're just going to do some rough cutting here. Now obviously you're going to want to measure your 1 inch, make sure that it's printing correctly. I give you some tips on the pattern to make sure that you're getting it printed correctly. So we're just going to rough cut these with paper scissors. And I do give some recommended cutting for the different pieces. There's 9 pieces of fabric. It really should only take like less than 2 fat quarters to make this. So again, there's a 1 inch mark on the page, but usually if you test just one of them, it should be fine. You'll also notice on the quilt block that there are little star or tick marks. This is where we're going to be aligning the pieces, because as you've noticed, there are 3 pieces that make up this star. So let's start with the first piece. Move this out of the way. Now I'm using a light box. This is a Daylight Company light box called the Wafer 1. I have these linked in my shop. I'm also using a Juki 2010Q straight stitch machine. I have a Sew Steady table, Versatable. It's huge. I love it. It's all the way out here. On top of it, it comes with the Versatable comes with this grid glider, or you can get it separate. Helps with seam allowance and things like that. Let's see. I'm using my Daylight Company Slimline 3 light. It really helps brighten up my workspace. And I'm also going to be using a add a quarter ruler. This one's pink. I have different colors in my shop. And just a rotary cutter, some other sewing paraphernalia. Alright, so let's get started. I've already pre-cut the pieces just to get us going. So I'm also going to show you how to foundation paper piece and how to some tricks as well that I've learned along the way. So number 1, I'm using red and white. So the background of the star, which in this one is blue, the background in this star is blue. I'm going to make one that's red, and the inside of the star, which is this area right here, is going to be white. So on the pattern, the darker shaded areas are the star, and the lighter ones, or the white ones, are the background. So I'm covering up the area for the piece number 1. I'm going to go ahead and flip that over. This is the part, whoops, let me start again. This is the part that most people don't do, so maybe this little trick is new to you. I'm going to use, this is a piece of cardstock or comic book board. It's a real thick cardboard, and I just made a straight edge. I used a blade and a ruler, made that edge nice and straight. I'm going to go ahead and align that with the sewing line that I'm about to make and trim, like kind of pre-trim if you will, that edge. This is going to give me a nice line to align my next piece to. Alright, so I'm going to flip that over. Piece number 2 is a star piece. This needs a little bit of pressing, so I'm going to go ahead and press that real quick. I do use the Oliso mini iron. I love these things because they don't turn off. They don't have the auto off, which I love because it comes with the silicone mat. so it rests on there, and it also, you can flip it over and hang it up with the hook on there. Anyway, I just love that it doesn't that it doesn't turn off, because there's nothing worse than having an iron that is not ready to go when you want to sew with it. Okay, so I've got that nice and flat. All right, so this is the edge that we just made, and I'm going to align my next piece up with that, knowing that it's going to flip over and cover everything. So when I align this, I don't want to align it down here, because when I flip it over, it won't cover everything. I want to align it centered like, and then I'm going to hold on to everything, the paper, the two pieces of fabric, without shifting everything, and I'm going to take it and flip it and get it ready for sewing this line. I'm going to back tack. Now, if you aren't sure of your alignment, you might want to choose a longer stitch length, and then it'll be easier to pick out and readjust after the fact. Now, there is a little bit of too much red hanging out here. I'm going to go ahead and retrim that. There we go. And that is covering the area. See how that covered the number 2 area just right? So the next thing I'm going to do is to give myself a nice press and prepare for piece number 3. Alright, so I'm ready for this piece right here. I'm going to take my white number 3, piece number 3, and make sure that it's covering everything. Right, I've got it covering everything, and now I can see through, because my light board is helping me see through everything. I'm going to give myself, I'm kind of eyeballing a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of this fabric here. Folding this back, I'm going to lay my hand over this excess piece of the number 3 fabric and take out this piece of cardboard, and I'm going to flip out the rest of the fabric, right? It looks kind of wonky, but essentially we're going to be making a line right here and then flipping this part over again. Alright, so I'm flipping this over, holding on to everything and transferring it down here. That's why I love this setup so much. It's just, I have plenty of room on the side. I just move things over. Again, my stitch length is 1.5. Now, if you're not sure about this, you can definitely change your stitch length to 3, and then it makes it easier to pick out stitches and readjust if you need to. But I'm feeling pretty confident about this. So we're going to take a look real quick, see how that ended up. So I flip it over, check all my lines, and it did cover everything. Perfect. But I have all of this that I want to get rid of, so I'm going to flip that back, flip my paper back, and then nest my 1/4 inch or add a 1/4 ruler and trim the excess. Now, when I flip it over, there's nothing else, no extra fabric. I'm going to take this over and press that down. Now, there are some, the pieces, this piece and this piece are kind of larger compared to the smaller piece, and I'd like to kind of manage it from flopping around all over the place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use a little bit of this fabric glue. It's like a little glue stick, and it's washable, so it's not going to stain anything, and it'll come out when I do eventually wash this quilt. And then I'm just going to trim away the edges. So I thought I had a larger, there it is. Thought I had a larger ruler, and here it is. Okay, so I'm just going to be trimming away the excess, trimming on the dotted line, not the solid line, right? We need that dotted line trim because that is, in between here is our seam allowance. Trim that away. And just a couple more to trim away. There we go. Alright, that piece is done. 1 down, 2 to go. The next piece is pieces 4, 5, and 6. We're going to do them in order. So piece number 4 is our star. This is has a little bit of a fold into it. So I'm going to just, I sprayed it with a little bit of starch just to get that, help that fold come out. You can put water in these irons right here. I haven't put any water in mine yet today. So I just hit it with some starch. Or I guess it's not technically starch. This is premium quilting and crafting spray by Magic. It's new. So spray, spray. So that just helps. It also makes everything a little stiffer and it's easier to work with. It's a new product, so I'm still trying it out. Alright. Boy, that feels nice. Alright, so I'm going to put that under number 4. Our next line is going to be between 4 and 5. So this is our sewing line. We're going to flip that over and get that ready. Okay, sorry. I flipped it once too many times. I didn't mean to confuse you there. Alright, so I'm going to get that right up next to that line. This is the sewing line we're going to make. We're going to flip back and give ourselves a nice line to help us with the next piece of fabric. So the next piece of fabric is number 5, which is the background fabric right here. And this just covers it. I think I ran out. I only had like 1/8 of a yard. And so, yeah, I think this will be more than enough though. Right? Yeah, more than enough. Okay. So I'm going to give myself, I'm thinking that's 1/4 of an inch away from that. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to flip that back. Got a hold of everything except for this piece of cardstock. Alright, so now I'm going to take everything, the paper and the fabrics included, and get it ready for sewing. This grid glider is super slick, so sliding it around is very convenient. I mean, I don't lose control of it over it, but I can get it to where I want it to be without too much trouble. Alright, here's my sewing line with my stitch length at 1 1/2. Press that out. Perfect. Just like that. There we go. Alright, so the next one that we're going to do is number 6, which is another red piece. It kind of has a fold in it, so I'm going to get rid of that. This is the aerosol, which works fine. They also gave me a non-aerosol, which, I don't know, it's out of my reach, so we're just going to use this one. Alright. So this one, we want to cover everything, but before we do that, did I trim away? No, we need to do that. We need to trim this away. Because see all this extra? We don't need all the extra. Move that back. Trim away. There we go. Okay, so you can kind of see the lines right here. I mean, if I take away the grid, the larger one of these comes with a cutting mat that doesn't have a grid. I have the smaller one, which is perfect for my table size, but you can see the lines of where this needs to cover. So I'm just covering it up, right? You can kind of see where the line is there too. I'm going to come just below that, and fold this back, right? That's about where my sewing line is going to be, about 1/4 inch. Now I'm holding this down here, holding this down and taking away this part. Now this is a tricky angle, right? I mean, normally it's really kind of, you use a really big piece of fabric to make sure that you're covered. But hopefully this technique will help you save fabric. But if you're 100% not sure, let's go ahead and give ourselves, now I'm holding everything still, let's give ourselves a longer stitch length. I'm going to give ourselves a 3 stitch length, and that way, if we're not 100% sure, you can just give yourself enough grace so that when you have to seam rip, that it's not going to take forever. But we're going to test this real quick. Alright, so there's that. I'm not going to cut anything away yet. I just want to make sure it's covering. Oh, looky there. It covered everything just fine. Okay, now that we're happy with that, we don't need to take the stitches out. We're gonna just sew over it with our regular stitch length. And the reason we want the regular stitch length, which is a 1.5, is because this really perforates the paper and makes it easier to rip things out. So we're doing the large stitch length just so that we can double check our placement, and then the shorter stitch length when we've got it just the way we want it, and for perforation. Alright, so I'm just flipping that back. I almost cut on that. I don't want to do that. I want to cut on my cutting mat. Be careful, Nicole. Alright. Cut that away. And then we're going to press. Just keep pressing. This red is real pretty. This, I think that it's Poppy is the name of this color. It's one that I have in my shop by Paintbrush Studio. And anyway, I love the color. And I got a fuzzy right there. I need to get rid of that. I do have a little bit more fabric here, just kind of like we did over here. I'm going to hit that with a little bit of glue, just so that it'll stay in place while I'm working with these 3 different pieces. Hit it with the heat, and then we're going to trim this block down. Alright, get my longer ruler out and trim at the dashed lines. These are our cutting lines. And then after this piece, we'll have one more piece to create from our foundation paper, and then we will start putting these things together. When we put them together, we will align the pieces with these different stars. Those stars are there for placement so that everything lines up when you put it together. Alright, that one we're going to set aside. We've got one more. This last piece right here. We've got another piece that apparently I had it folded because there's like a fold on each piece that I'm getting here. So let's hit that with some of this stuff. Get this out of the way. Move that over there. There we go. I really like using this stuff. It makes the fabric really easy to work with. So far, so good. I'm liking it. Okay. We're going to put that down on... Now, our next sewing line is going to be between 7 and 8. So, I could flip this over and do that whole thing, but I'm just going to eyeball it. Can you see? I don't know if you can see that very well. I'm sure that if I took this grid off, you could probably see a little bit better. But can you see how it's like a 1/4 inch? I'm just eyeballing it, but you see it's a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to flip this over. You can still see the 1/4 inch. My piece number 8 is right here. It's kind of a large one, but it is a large piece. I am right here, and I need to give myself a little bit more room to flip. Where's my line? It's right there. Okay. So my line is right there. Does that make sense? Because there's the line that I'm sewing about right there. So I'm trying to line up my cardboard with the sewing line. And then I'm going to flip this over and hold that back. So right now, I'm holding this white piece underneath plus the top of this red. And then I'm going to take the cardboard out and I'm going to flip out that little piece there. So then I'm going to hold everything together. I'm going to hold everything together and I'm going to flip it over and we're going to sew that line down. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. Okay. So again, the line we're sewing is right here. I need to change my stitch length to 1.5. Now, if you're not 100% sure here, this is a good time to use the 3-inch stitching so that you can make adjustments accordingly if you need to. But I'm feeling pretty confident about it. Let's take a look and see how we did. Right? Oh, that looks good. There's that sewing line that we had. I'm just going to fold that paper all the way down, trim this excess off of there. All right, and then I'm going to take this back over to the ironing board and give that a nice press. I think it's easier for you to see if whoops, I'm going to need this for my next piece. I think it's easier for you to see if I don't have the grid on here, but I need it for cutting right now. So I'm going to, our last line is going to be sewn right here, okay? So I'm putting the cardboard right up next to that line and I'm flipping over that piece of paper. I'm nesting that seam lip and trimming away the excess. All right, so from here, I'm going to remove this so you can see a little bit better. All right, so I need to cover this up right here like this. This piece needs to cover this whole thing. All right, and that's how I want it to end up after I sew it. So I'm going to use this piece right here to help me with my sewing line. That's where my sewing line is going to be, because you can see the shadow right there. Then I'm going to flip this piece back, hold it down here, and flip it out, right? Just like all the other times before. Then I'm going to get a hold of everything without moving things around and sew that down. Now I'm feeling pretty confident that I don't need to do this multiple times, I think. Okay, let's try it. I'm going to do 2 or 3 because I just don't know. Something's feeling a little off. Maybe I'm just being a little crazy here. I've changed it to stitch length 3 just to be sure, because I sure do not like picking out stitches. My least favorite thing to do. Okay. Yeah, see, that got my stitches, my stitches kind of got all the way over here, so I'm not sure if that's going to work out or not. Yeah, I mean, it'll cross over, but I don't know. I think it should be okay. Yeah, my cut line is right there. I don't know what I'm worrying about. It's fine, Nicole. All right, let me flip this back. We're gonna do the right stitch length this time and secure that down while perforating that paper. So it's time to trim. Trim that away. There we go. And we need to press. And I suspect we also need to glue this down. And then we're going to start putting these pieces together. Trimming on the dashed line, the cut line. This is the longest side of them all. That's why this pattern ended up being on 2 pieces of paper instead of 1, because this piece is large. Alright, last cut. Alright, let's look at putting these together now. I don't think that I need the cutting board anymore. Whoops. This light box turns off and on really easily by just, there's a little button up top here. Alright, so it goes together like this, right? That's how it goes together. So we're going to put these pieces first together, and then we'll add this one. So in order to do that, we need to put these right sides together. Okay, so right sides together, and we need to align these stars with these stars. And the easiest way to do that, even if you have a light box, it's hard to do it without, I found this way to be the easiest. So I put a pin, a sewing pin, right in the center of the star. Okay. And then I'm going to find the other star on this side and find my way there. Oh, a little bit more. I'm just trying to get right in the middle. Okay, there we go. It only took 2 pokes. Alright, and then, I don't know how well you can see the pin, but it's not like, see, I don't want it to be all sideways and crooked. See, I don't want it sideways. I want it to be straight across. So that's a good alignment. And then I'm going to put a clip. I'm also making sure that it's straight across the top here, right? I'm going to do that with the other star. This is a little bit easier, and it should line up pretty good. Poking right through. Yep, it lines up pretty good. Alright. I could get a little bit better on this by lining that up and poking that right through. Yeah, that's pretty good. Not too shabby. Okay. So I've got my pins in, my clips are in place after I've pinned it. Now I'm going to take my pins out so that I can sew, because I've got everything where I want it to be. I'm going to use a 3 stitch length because I like to double check before I stitch these down, especially when I'm putting these pieces together, because the last thing I want to do, and I think I've mentioned this before, is to rip out stitches. Just moving the clips as I get to them, sewing directly on top of that line. Alright, let's see how this turned out. That's actually pretty good. See how nice and straight that is? Dare I say perfect? And on the top here, real nice line. There's a dog ear there, of course. We'll have to deal with that later, but that's nice, right? Yay! Okay, so we like how that turned out. We're going to go over this row of stitching again, but we're going to change the stitch length back to 1.5, and we're going to sew this properly. All right. Now before we add this other piece, we're going to take off the paper from the seam allowance on both sides here and this corner right here, because we're going to press it down. We want to get that paper out of the way. This is just a little tip so that you don't end up having to use tweezers to pull out paper later. So this is nice and perforated, especially this seam, since we've sewn over it once at a 3 stitch length and again at the 1.5. So the paper is perforated. Just going to pull this out. Now, I think I mentioned that I used that other paper I use a different paper typically when I'm doing foundation paper piecing, and I don't have enough without opening up a whole fresh pack, and so I just use regular computer printer paper. Totally fine, totally works. It just is a little more time consuming to rip out the paper because the specialty paper is made for this and it rips out quite easily. Alright, but that was no problem. So, and again, I'm going to take this little tip corner out and just rip it out of the way. I am going to press this down now because our next seam is going to go right over that. I want that to lay flat right there. Alright, so let's press this real quick. And I'm just going to leave all the paper on, the other paper on. I just wanted to get the seam allowance paper off of there, and that little tip corner, wanted to make sure that that is out of the way so we don't have to use our tweezers to get paper out or accidentally sew paper into our quilt forever. So the next piece we're going to align right here and right here. Okay, right here at this point, I don't know if you can see, right here. And it's going to meet. You want the star to meet right at the point. Let me show you what it looks like on the star that's done. Whoops. This is the last piece that we're doing right here. And it met perfectly right there. And that's what we're going for, is everything meeting up nice. Okay? So this star is what we're going for right here. This star, I'm going to put my needle right in the middle of that. And on the other side, it should come up right next to the fold. Okay. And on the other side, also, this pin has to meet it right there. And it's actually kind of easy to see because you know you're going to be coming right up where that fabric meets, and you can kind of see the line. So I'm just coming from the other side, and I got pretty close to the center. I think that's going to work. Alright. So I'm making sure that my needle is straight across. It's not all wonky, right? And then I'm going to hold it and clip. Clip there. And then I'm also going to make sure that my top edge is nice and straight. All the way across. Nice and clipped and secured. Okay, so now I'm going to take out my pin, and then I'm going to just sew along here. I'm still going to use the 3 stitch length. Just better be safe than sorry. I'm sure you will someday want to skip that part just for the sake of speed. But for me, I just would rather not rip, and I like things to be just so. So I do that little extra step. Now you don't want to rip out too much because you lose your line here, but that's something that's nice about this grid glider, is that I have my 1/4 inch seam mark right here, this little line, and so I'm able to keep sewing without that sewing line and meet up where I need to down the line. See? I picked it right up where I left off. Alright, so that's on the 3 stitch length. Let's see how that turned out. Oh, look at that. That is wonderful. I'm really happy with how that turned out. That's the point that I'm going for right there. Just so nice. It's nice to have those registration marks right there. So we're going to go back over this with a shorter stitch length. I feel like my needle is going to come unthreaded, so let's keep our fingers crossed here. Alright, last seam. Okay, all that's left to do is rip out the paper, which is pretty easy to do. It's very satisfying. Alright, the paper is out. Now I'm going to press everything down this way. There we go. Alright, so the back is nice, and doesn't that look nice? Look how pretty. Now I do have dog ears. You see the dog ears. We're going to take care of that. You can use a rotary cutter and a ruler. I'm just going to use these scissors. Easy enough. Trim, triminy. Get this little guy right here. And there's just a little thread nest that comes out. A bunch of threads come out all at the same time right here. That's it. So this is, and there's like a little ruler down here. So this is 8 inches unfinished square. So when you put it in a quilt, then it will be 7.5 inches finished. Isn't that nice? I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and found my little tips and tricks helpful, and that you go and get this pattern and try some for yourself.